Very much. Ms. Capito?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to submit a statement from the Housing Policy Council.
Without objection, such is the order.
Thank you. I have a couple kind of specific questions, then I'm going to ask a general question. On your Making Home Affordable graph that as of August 30th, you have the trial modifications started. Do you have any statistics on actual modifications that are considered past the trial period? Because the trial period is if you're on time for 3 months. What are you finding there? People staying on time? Have any of these moved into I don't know, what are you going to call that, a solid modification?
The trial modifications are real modifications. They really reduce people's payments down to 31% debt to income. The question is when they're finalized. They get finalized if the borrower pays on time for 3 months at the end of that time period. Because the program takes a while to ramp up and there's a 3-month time period through which borrowers need to pass that test, there are very few borrowers who have reached that moment in time between the 3-month trial period and the final period. So we don't have solid enough statistics on those in the final modification yet.
So you don't have any like preliminary indications of people falling behind or staying on it, or too early to tell?
Just too early to tell. I want to be hesitant about using information unless I know exactly what the numbers are.
Okay, I want to ask about the incentives. For instance, City Mortgage here has 191,000 eligible. They've identified eligible delinquencies. So they get paid $1,000 for identifying each one of those?
No, they don't get paid anything for identifying any mortgage. The list here is eligible 90-day delinquencies to provide a baseline of comparison among the different servicers. The determination that a loan is eligible is nothing more than a data point in the chart. Okay. So what they get paid for doing is for doing a modification that is successful, that reaches the status of a finalized modification. No payment is made unless borrowers successfully reach the point of a final modification.
So and then they get paid because we've had no final modifications. So there's
been a small amount of payments going to the final amount, but it's too early in the program to assess again exactly those numbers.
Well, just using City Mortgage.
But there are no significant dollars out the door yet.
Using them as an example, the Citigroup got $45 billion in the TARP plan, and they have the most to gain if they actually go this direction. I realize that in terms of their bottom line, it's probably a minimal thing, but it is taxpayers' dollars going out to. Are you finding that servicer payments are proving to be an incentive for people to the servicers to get more involved in this program?
We believe a combination of two things are providing strong incentives for servicers to participate. One is having clear program rules, Treasury guidance, establishing an industry standard for modifications. And second is the structure of the incentive payments, both to the servicers as well as to investors.
Okay. Last question. This is a more general question. We've heard, and I mentioned in my opening statement, too, that rising unemployment is what's contributing now to probably more and more of the foreclosure issues that we're seeing presently. So then we have the question, if you're going to look at loan modifications, how do you modify a loan for somebody who has no income or maybe has such minimal income that it's going to be very difficult for them to have a loan modification? What do you see on that horizon?
Servicers generally have in place temporary forbearance programs for people who lose their jobs to give them an opportunity to get back on their feet. And I think there are measures we could take consistent with the program rules to formalize that within the program structure. So I do think we need to be attentive to precisely the circumstance you described.
But in some sense, wouldn't, if certain servicers have a program in place, maybe a 3-month moratorium if you've lost your job, are we kicking the can down the road here, too, in some ways to try to help this family the best way that we can as a...
I think there's a balance. I think that if the program goes on too long or is too generous, it's not going to be helpful to anybody. But if it's confined within a set period of time, a lot of people are going to be able to get back on their feet, and you want to give them a temporary respite to do that.
Well, and finally, I'd like to ask, if you could make the committee, or at least me specifically, I'm interested in knowing, once the trial modifications are made, how many are sustaining their modification. I hope it's 100%. I mean, that of course is what we would all want. But to see what you're seeing in the trend, because there could be something in statistics very quickly there that we could make adjustments to target our dollars more efficiently.
We will, as soon as we have data that we think is robust enough to withstand empirical testing, we'd be, of course, going to make that public as part of our regular reporting and make it available to the committee. I just want to say that although our hope would be that everybody can succeed, I don't think that's a realistic measure of success under the program. We know that some people aren't going to be able to make it, and I think we need to be realistic about our expectations in that regard.
Thank you very much.